and welcome to today's training on student surveys. My name is Ryan Balch. I'm the CEO of My Student Survey. During today's training, we'll go over the following topics. First, we'll start with some background on student surveys in general, as well as the STEP survey. Next, we'll preview the teacher feedback reports. Following that, we'll talk about some logistics and important information for survey administration, as well as give you some planning time for your survey administration. And finally, we'll leave you with some school-based presentation slides that you can use to show to your faculty. Today's webinar training will be done in conjunction with a follow-up that your project manager will schedule, so you can have a conference call, you can ask questions, or talk about administration plans. It's first important to think about the why of student surveys. Students obviously have the most contact with teachers. They are the direct customers of a teacher. Next, we see that student surveys can offer meaningful and actionable feedback to teachers that can help them grow as professionals, and we'll see some of this in our teacher feedback reports. And finally, student surveys can empower students and engage them in their education experience. We've seen some positive research for student surveys over the past few years. First, we see that student surveys show a positive and significant relationship with value added. So teachers that have higher scores on student survey also tend to have students that make the largest gains in achievement. Next, we see that they're, in some cases, more accurate in predicting student achievement than even things like self-ratings or observations or principal summative evaluations. And finally, we want to make sure that they also relate to other outcomes that we care about. Things like whether students are engaged, and things like efficacy are about whether they feel confident in their subject. The STEP survey was created using a validation framework that basically tries to establish construct validity, which just means, are you measuring what you think you're measuring? And in this case, we're measuring effective teaching practice. To establish construct validity, we need evidence from a variety of sources. So we'll start at the top with content validity. And that just means, are you asking about the right behaviors? To do this, we talk about research behaviors. We talk about behaviors from validated observation rubrics such as Danielson. Following that, we talk to teachers. We do teacher interviews to make sure the questions are fair, make sure they address a variety of subjects. The next step, which is one of the most important steps in the process, is asking students about the question. We call these student cognitive interviews, where we ask them questions about each item. We say, what do you think this means? How often does it happen? And we make sure that they're answering the question in the way that we intended for them to do it. The final piece, but when we did a large-scale pilot test with 15,000 students to establish convergent validity as well as predictive validity. We want to make sure that it aligns with things like self-efficacy, teacher observations, and we also want to establish that predictive validity where it can predict student achievement. These 5 sources of evidence gives us confidence that we are measuring what we think we're measuring. We now want to talk about how the STEP survey is different. First, it was developed to be aligned to major instructional frameworks such as Danielson and CLAS and others as part of our validation framework. So the behaviors that you'll see within the items are not going to seem different. They're going to seem like teaching behaviors you've seen before. The next piece is that everybody that works for My Student Survey has been a former teacher and has also been an administrator, either the district or the state level. We think this gives us a perspective that helps us both in the administration as well as what you'll see in the development of the reports and the surveys and so forth. And finally, one of the things we do is we use screening procedures to eliminate invalid surveys. I want to talk a little bit more about that. Screening procedures help us identify student responses that are invalid. So it's not just if they finish it too early, but it's a targeted approach to outliers. We want to find out if a student is answering a question very different than the other students within the classroom. This helps with some of the concerns of teachers trying to use this as an opportunity to get back at a teacher, or if they're just having a bad day and they don't feel like taking the survey. We identify them and we remove those surveys if we determine them to be invalid. Next thing we want to go into is talk a little bit more about the survey. The survey is divided into 6 different categories. We know that teachers play a lot of different roles within the same classroom, and we wanted to give a framework that represents that. So it's not something you're going to have to learn that's new. It's something you already know and live in each day. The roles of the teacher that we see are the ability to present information, manage a classroom. Some days you may need to be counseling students. At the same time, you also have to be a coach and pushing students and motivating them while being an expert in your subject. So all of these are the different roles, and we try to give feedback within each one of these roles. To be able to give you a few sample items, you might have some things like I learned from my mistakes in this class. My teacher shows us examples of student work. When my teacher asks questions, he gives us a few seconds to think before calling students, trying to tap into that idea of wait time. And finally, something like my teacher gives me helpful comments or feedback on my work. So you can see these are all generated to be about teacher practice and about research-based teaching behaviors. We now want to go through and give you a demonstration of the teacher feedback reports. We've designed these to be intentionally to be very user-friendly and to be able to direct you towards some next steps.
On your screen now, you can see an overview of the teacher total score. This graph combines all of the different questions in the survey to give an overall score for a teacher, and it provides a school average as well as a district average for context. There are 6 categories within the survey. These 6 categories fall within the different roles that a teacher might play in the classroom. You can see these categories up at the top, and you can see the teacher scores for each category down near the bottom. To find more information about each category, you can either click on the categories here or go back up to the top and click on the presenter category here. When we go to the category, the overall graph shows the teacher average, the school average, and the district average for all of the questions in the presenter category. When you scroll down to the bottom, you can see all the questions and items within the presenter category. You can see for the first question, this teacher had a 3.91 average. You can also see the school average and the district average. Down below also shows a chart of how all the students responded to this particular survey question. To see other questions, you can scroll through and see the questions. As you can see, it is noted that an area of strength was found for this item. What that means is that this teacher scored well in comparison to other teachers. Similarly, there's a question that has an area of focus. Again, this is how a teacher did in comparison to other teachers. For more explanation on how an area of strength and an area of focus is calculated, you can click on the question mark button at the left. Each teacher will have an area of strength and an area of focus within each of the 6 categories. Teachers can go to any of these categories to see their overall score in the category, as well as see the items within that scale. Next, what you can do to use these results is you can click here for next steps. What this does is it takes all of the areas of focus and puts them together in one place. This allows a teacher to choose 2 or 3 of these items which particularly resonate with the teacher and use these in conversation with their instructional leader to think of a professional development plan. Near the bottom are some suggestions about what you can do with some of these feedback in terms of asking your colleagues, sharing with students, or looking for professional development opportunities. Finally, if a teacher would like to print their overall report, they can click on this button in order to see an overall teacher score and all the different categories that can be then copied into a PDF report.
Now that you have some background on the STEP survey, as well as our teacher feedback reports, we want to go over some more details about the survey administration. As the survey coordinator, you'll serve as the point person for your school for survey administration. You'll develop a local survey administration plan and coordinate the survey administration. You'll provide a brief introduction to the school faculty about the student survey. You'll distribute proctor's instructions, and you'll help teachers with accessing their survey results. As far as the administrative guidelines, you'll receive a packet at your school that will contain proctor instructions for all teachers in your school. You'll distribute the proctor's instructions to whoever is administering the survey for that teacher if you're using proctors, or you can give them to the actual teachers if your teachers are administering their own survey. In terms of who should be surveyed, teachers should meet all of the following criteria to have students take surveys about them. They should plan instruction and deliver instruction as well as assign grades or collaborate in the assignment of grades. Please check with your administrator to verify that these criteria are consistent with your goals for survey administration. In the proctor instructions, which we'll show an example of in a second, there'll be three types of code. The first one is a token. This is a 6-digit number that will direct you to the correct survey version. Maybe it'll be 3 through 5 or 6 through 12 or unique for your school or district. Next, they'll have a 3-digit number, which is your school code. And finally, there'll be another 3-digit number, which is the teacher code. To complete the survey administration, it's taken using a web browser. It's compatible with all major browsers, including Internet Explorer 7 and later, Firefox, Chrome, Opera, and Safari. You do need internet access, and each user should have your own access to your own computer. And finally, instructions are read by the proctor prior to survey administration, with the tokens and the codes posted or written up on the board in the classroom. And as a tip, some schools put a picture of the teacher being surveyed up on the front to make sure they don't get confused about who they're taking the survey about. Here's an example of the survey proctor administration instructions. The cover page will have the teacher's name that's being surveyed, as well as their token, their school ID, and teacher ID. The page behind it will have all the information that they'll need, including a script for them to say, the information they need for that teacher, and so forth. This is what you'll distribute to proctors or teachers administering their own survey. To help you out, we're now going to go through a demonstration of the actual survey and walk you through what online administration looks like.
We will now go through how survey administration works using the My Student Survey website. First, from any web browser, you'll go to mystudentsurvey.com. When the web page loads, what you'll go to is you'll see that you can do Take the Survey. So we click right here. At this point, we'll be entering in our token. We already went over what tokens, school codes, and teacher codes were. So I'm going to enter my token right now and click Continue. This will take me to my survey and make sure that it goes to the right survey. Here are the instructions for the survey. It talks about answering questions about your teacher or whatever instructions we want to put in. At that point, you can go down and click Next after you've read. This is where you'll now enter your school code. School codes are generally 3 digits, so we'll do 243 right now, and then we click Next. We then want to enter in our teacher code, as we described earlier. So let's do 123. At that point, we're going to talk about the answer choices for the survey. So we have always, almost always, often, sometimes, and never, or whatever answer choices they're there for the survey. So we go down to the bottom and we click on yes, that we understand these survey choices, and then we click on the next part. At this point, we begin taking the survey. You can see the survey questions are here on the left, and the answer choices are across the top. We go through and we answer a question, like so, and then when we're done, we'll click on Next. This will take us through the rest of the survey questions. At the end, we would click on the Submit button. We can go through kind of fast. And by the way, a survey like this would not be counted because we do have a minimum time spent on survey. So if students are doing this, their survey would be eliminated. So we go through the different questions on the survey. And when we get to the end, there'll be a couple questions. These can be any type of demographic questions. And in particular, we want to know about the grade level of the student, as well as how long the student has spent in the class. At that point, you click Submit, and then say thank you for completing the survey. And that completes the survey administration part.
In some cases, it may happen that we send you a roster file or proctor instructions that don't include a teacher that needs to be surveyed. If this is the case, you can create a teacher ID starting at 500. For instance, if Miss Jones does not have any proctor instructions, she would have the same school code and token as everybody else, but she'll have a teacher ID of 500. If you have a second teacher, Miss Smith also doesn't have instructions, they would be 501. You would just need to send us this list of extra teachers to support@mystudentsurvey.com using the format that is displayed below. Also, to go over a couple frequently asked questions. First, how long does a survey take? Generally, it takes the students between 15 and 20 minutes to complete the survey, so you'll want to allot at least a half an hour for students to log on, take the survey, and complete it. Also, teachers often want to know when they'll be able to get teacher reports back. For the online administration, reports are back within 1 week following the close of the survey administration window. We now want to turn to some questions that will help you with survey administration in your school. You'll see some guidance for both elementary and middle and high school. In the elementary level, each student generally takes the survey twice, and each teacher will have one class take the survey about them. What this may look like is that a student may take the survey about their homeroom teacher, and they could take it about one other specials teacher. If you have two third grade classes, they could both take it about their homeroom teacher. One could take it about the PE teacher, and one could take it about the music teacher for their second survey. At the middle and high school level, generally each student will take the survey twice. Some will have to take it 3 times if their teacher had planning during your scheduled administration periods. And then each teacher will have 2 classes take the survey about them. We now want to show you a sample schedule that you could possibly use for elementary school survey administration. For instance, you could have in the morning, you could distribute proctor instructions to main classroom teachers. From 9 to 9:45, you could have all of the homeroom teachers, take the survey. At that time period, you would then have the coordinator distribute proctor instructions for all specialist teachers. From 10 to 10:45, students could take it about whichever specialist teacher they have at that time period. And note, this could be on a different day or the following week to avoid the survey being taken too many times within one day. We now see a survey administration plan sample for high school. If you chose second and third period as the periods that you wanted to administer the survey, you could distribute the instructions for second period. They could take their surveys. You could administer the instructions for third period teachers, and they could take the survey. And then during fourth period, anybody who had planning during the second period could administer the survey. And again, this could also be on different days or in different weeks depending on the survey window. We want to leave you with some guiding questions to help with your planning. You can pause this presentation to go through and start mapping out the answers to this question and start building an initial schedule. You'll be able to go over this schedule and ask questions in conjunction with your project manager during your follow-up conference call. Thank you for attending today's training on survey administration. If you have any questions, you can follow up with your project manager, or you can save them for your follow-up conference call where you can ask questions and go over your planning schedule with them. The last thing we'll leave you with, which will also be emailed to you, is a copy of a few slides that you could potentially use to present this information to your faculty. You'll see there's information that talks about why student surveys, talks about the screening procedures, the various categories that are on the survey, as well as some sample questions. You can add in any slides you want to about the timing of your administration or other details you would like them to know. Thank you again for your time, and we wish you the best with your survey administration and hope the teacher feedback reports you receive out of it help your teachers grow as professionals.